Hi everyone. So tariffs went into effect and you can see we waterfall sold off early in the session, touched the level here, 574, which was our next level to the downside. If this level broke, overthrew it a lot, got back above it early in the 10 o'clock candle, rallied up, hit the 21, sold really strong into the close, but after hours we're finding a little bit of strength. I heard rumors of some potential workarounds for tariffs going into effect, so I think markets are trying to buy into that potentially. I wouldn't get too hyped on that yet, but let's take a look at the charts and see if we can find some more evidence for a potential bounce in tomorrow's session. Do me a quick favor and like and subscribe and watch the video till the end to help out the channel, and let's get started. So speaking of those tariffs, you can see here it says Lutnick came out and said the tariffs could be rolled back as early as Wednesday. It says scaled back. It doesn't mean that they're going to go away completely, and it's still a could, doesn't mean it will happen by Wednesday. So we'll see. The tariffs did go into effect after a 1 month pause, and markets did not like it at all, of course. But now we're going to see if President Trump will probably announce a tariff compromise deal with Mexico and Canada soon, according to the Commerce Secretary. So waiting to see if that happens. It's potentially on the table. Moving over to fear and greed, we're at a 20. It says 24 yesterday, but I think we were at a 20 yesterday, so relatively unmoved. You can see this continued sell-off pressure through that 125 EMA, continues to downtrend every metric in extreme fear, except for junk bond demand, which is now in extreme greed, apparently. So safe haven continues to sell off, makes sense with equities massively underperforming while bonds are holding up well, but junk bonds still doing well, VIX going higher, put call ratio extremely high, not super high yet, into that 0.9 area. Once we get above that metric, that's about as high as it goes. You can see back here, almost to a 1. That was pretty unusual, but just about every metric here saying extreme fear. Quick reminder for seasonality, it's not really playing a huge role, but typically this is a bullish period. Looks like we're following the normal year versus that post-election year, which is relatively bearish up through the 17th. We'll see if that continues to follow through here. The short-term low would be the 10th. So seems like we're following this track with lower lows to come. Moving over to Max Pain, everything is super bullish now from current levels. We'll see if any of this follows through. You can see the end of the week numbers, 592, $15 higher from here. This doesn't have a ton of weight when we have fundamental changes to the economy, but just understand this is kind of on the back burner. Maybe if we get those tariffs lifted, these play a little bit more of a role, but for now, I just don't see them mattering to markets. Moving over to the charts, looking at the S&Ps, you can see it was down 1.18%, almost touched that 200. Still think that that is going to happen with the gap and fall. That is sitting at 568.74. We'll see if that level matters. I have a level there, 569.90, so watching that zone as well. Still think we're going to touch it. Still think we're going to go. You can see this gap fill back here. Finally got that to the 5 November candle. Maybe that's part of why we're seeing a little bit of a bounce, but structurally, still think this is going to touch that 200 before we get the bounce in any kind of substantial way. And then like we talked about on the intro, your levels here, 579.78. If we break back below that, expecting about a $5 move here, 1% lower to here, and then my next level is about 569.90. So we'll see if we get to a lower low tomorrow. Definitely depends on if we get any more news around tariffs. If we get positive news, could absolutely see this push to 585, maybe even retrace up to the 591 area. That would be interesting, but for now, still very, very much a down and to the right style market, especially with those tariffs getting enacted today. Moving over to the Tasty charts here, you can see that lowest ATR band sitting at 586.05 here for the daily chart, and that's pretty much where we ended up. The closing price for the day was sitting at 576.86, so right in that same region that we talked about. We'll see if it continues to ride this lowest ATR band to the downside. You can see huge volume continuing to come in on that selling pressure. And then looking at the hourly, grinding along that lowest ATR band, got extended, pull back to the middle of the range, hit the trailing stop, 584.38, still expecting this to sell. Depending on what we get out of that tariff news, is the tariff going to be truncated or pulled off? I still don't think that's really going to happen, but middle of the range, still bearish conditions. Moving over to the NASDAQ, similar thesis to the SPY charts, except we have already touched that 200. We overthrew it by quite a lot. The low of day was 487.74, the level there, 486.84. That's what we were looking for. Didn't quite touch it, but then we started to bounce really aggressive, and you can see after hours, we're right back to that 500 200 level, back above the 498.44 level. Really choppy session. You can see rallied up mid-session, just like we saw on the SPY charts, hit the 55 and sold super aggressive for that closing candle. Hit VWAP, hit the 9 EMA, bounced a little bit after hours. So we're still in this range, 498.44 up to 503.52. We'll see if we can hold this range, maybe break to the 509 area, or is it going to reject off that 55 again and then continue selling to these lower levels? 492 is the next one to the downside, with the trend sitting right in that same zone. So still bearish, but we do have some hope with that news from the Commerce Secretary. Moving over to the Tasty charts here for the Qs, you can see the trailing stop there is at 502.61 for the hourly chart. That's the level we touched. You can see the 55 also right there. Touched that level, sold really aggressively into the close. You can see huge selling volume on that candle as well. We did see a little bit of a bounce after hours, but unless that tariff news holds, I still expect this to sell to that lowest band, which would take you right back just past the lows of the day down into the 486.50 area. Then if we touch that zone, is it going to kind of continue and slow down, or is it going to cut right through there? Either way, still very much down into the right as we head into tomorrow's session. Moving over to the Russell and the Dow, you can see the Russell was down 1.3%. It was down much more on the session, but it ended up bouncing off of 205, closing above it, and again after hours up to 209. So a little bit more than 1% higher, recouping all of those gains if they can hold. And then looking at the Dow, big sells there to that 144. Also hit the next level, 426.20. So we'll see. Right now, your support is 426.20 with the after hours price action. If it can hold, you're looking for a rally back to 432.78. We are super extended to the downside, but again, fundamental moves can definitely continue to run. We'll see if we get any kind of bounce tomorrow. If we get a gap down, gap up, that could be interesting. Maybe we finally get a little bit more move to that 218 area where you have a consolidation of EMAs, but overall, still bearish, waiting to see what news we get. Moving over to Apple and Microsoft, you can see Apple was down 0.88. But again, after hours, recouping all of those losses. Microsoft basically flat on the day, holding that 388.03 level on a closing basis. Almost got down to the next one, 378.77, but just barely missed it. Momentum still bearish, RSI still bearish, but if 388 holds, then you're looking for 394.22. If it breaks down, then we're looking for that 378.77 level. This candle here on Microsoft actually looks a little bit better than the closing price, what we saw here on Apple, closing below the level 237.23, and then you got the 144 EMA right there, 232.53. You can see that huge up candle on Friday. Seems like we're going to get that continuation back to the 230 level. 230.28 is that level. Moving over to Tesla and NVIDIA, Tesla was down 4.43% all the way down to that 264.68 level. We said if 280 broke, that's where we were going. We touched the level and ended up bouncing a little bit. Still very much negative on the day, but you're below the 200. Volume continues to ramp on the selling action. There was more news about poor sales in Asia, so Tesla again suffering. If this zone here breaks, then we're looking for 232.57, and then you've pretty much round tripped this move here. Continues to look terrible, but if we can get back above 280, maybe we start to see a push back to that 307 area. So watching this one closely right now, still bearish for me. And then looking at NVIDIA, managed to stay positive on the day, 1.68%. We hit the trend, cut deeper to a lower low. Momentum still bearish, RSI still bearish. Waiting to see if we hit that 106.6 area. If we do, I think that's definitely a zone where you could find some support. Takes you kind of back to these lows of September 6th, somewhere in here, just to below it around 105. Either way, still looks like it's rolling to the downside, regardless of tariffs, but after hours you can see about a $2 bounce. Moving over to Amazon and Alphabet, you can see Amazon finally hit the 200 at 198.76. We pushed all the way to the level 255 cents, hit the 200 SMA, caught a little bit of a bounce from there. Is this the first bounce? Certainly a possibility. The 200 seems to be a magnet for everything, except for Alphabet, much lower than that. Hit the trend here. The trend is your support right now around 169. You can see RSI finding a little bit of strength, momentum finding a little bit of strength, a little bit up after hours. You got trend resistance here around 175. If you can get through here, then you want to look for that 21 EMA potentially in that 184.50 area. I have a level there, 185.22. Obviously very, very extended, seems to be finding strength at that trend line. It's a very, very long-term trend line. It It has mattered to price a lot, and that's where we are right now and seeming to find some strength from there, up 2.3% on the day. Moving over to staples and discretionaries, we got a double sell here today. Not great at all. Makes sense though, when you have everything selling, it's usually a fundamental shift, which seems to be what we're seeing right now. Staples down 1.7, discretionary is 1.7. So selling the same percentages, momentum stepping down, RSI breaking lower, huge volume. If we start to see an everything sell and this kind of accelerates a little bit more, that is going to be terrible. That means everything should be going lower. We'll see if that plays out. You still got the 200 here on discretionaries sitting at 202.02. In terms of support, my next level 203.98, and you can see discretionaries actually has not moved pretty much at all after hours. So waiting to see what happens there. 203.98 is the level. Moving over to breadth, this is absolutely not what you want to see. So we got massive sell-offs on breadth, not showing that bounce at all. We'll see if that does have any strength tomorrow, but right now breadth says we are going lower. We took out this consolidation. We touched the level at 40, expecting this to go at least to the trend here, 36.15. And you can see 20-day breaking below that trend line there, breaking below the level 36.60. Seems like we're headed back to that 16 area. If this accelerates, that's going to be terrible. Everything says bearish here. Again, maybe we get a slight reversal on that news, but markets seem pretty confident that we're going lower. Moving over to the dollar, even the dollar did not like the sell here today. So the dollar sold off, everything sold off. Big move there, almost 1% on the dollar. Went right to the level though, 105.5 was the level. We are just barely above it, 105.53. So looking to see if we touch that level, probably going to go. The dollar continued to cut through here. We expected it to continue to go lower to this level, and that seems to be in play, at least in my opinion. Below that, you got the 144 and the 200 sitting there around 105.14 and 105 flat there for the 200. So momentum bearish, RSI bearish. Again, we'll see if there's any kind of flip on the tariffs, but seems like for now, the dollar does not believe that, and the dollar is still selling. Moving over to JNK and TLT, both of these sold, continued to sell on JNK, TLT. This was the first sell candle we've seen there in a little bit. Had a slight hesitation here on the 27th, but then ended up going higher. High of day was 92.79. We're calling that a touch. We hit the 200, we hit the 144. Then we got a little bit of a sell from that level. We got the break here, got the continuation to the next level. Now I think we're probably going to pull back a little bit closer to the 21, maybe fill these gaps here down to that 90 area. We said we were extended here. We expected a little bit of a pull. We almost got overbought conditions. I'm sure we touched it at some point. Bonds are just a little bit extended to the short term. Again, medium term, still think we're going higher. Short term, probably a little bit bearish. And then looking at JNK a little closer, 200 is your current support. At 95.98, your next level to the downside is going to be 95.62. You can see big sells after hours, about 50 cents there. We'll see if that ends up holding. We have this kind of intermediate level there as well at 95.38. Seems like bonds are set to sell a little bit more tomorrow. Moving over to the VIX, we hit our price target on the VIX, hit this consolidation of trend lines here around the 25-22 area. You can see the high of day was 26.35. Is that going to be the peak and rejection? It has been a few times in the past, something to watch for. Can we continue higher up into the 28 area? Also a possibility. We're almost overbought at a 69.23. So VIX extended, but still looking quite bullish. Did show some rejection from those trend lines. Remains to be seen. I would argue probably one more wick at least, and then we could start to see this pullback, potentially back to the 20 area, and then maybe as low as the 1650 area. So area of resistance, we'll see if it can cut through there or not. Moving over to my accounts, I made a little bit of money. I traded pretty well on the day, not as well as I could have, but I feel like I say that every day, but managed to make money on a day where we closed negative, the after hours price action. I certainly didn't think that that was going to happen, and I was not prepared for it. I didn't want to have any positions short because I thought we were a little extended, and every time I try to get a little bit bullish here, I've been burned over the last couple days. So for now, no positions, watching to see what happens. My bias is still slightly bearish, but acknowledge that we could see some potential news about tariffs coming off, which I think would give markets at least a little bit of upside potential, maybe a shot in the arm. We'll see. Let me know down in the comments section what you think of markets. What do you think of the tariffs? Are there going to be some of them removed or smaller percentages tomorrow or the next day, let me know. Otherwise, like and subscribe if you got any value out of this video. Make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Of course, none of this is financial advice. This is all for entertainment purposes. Good luck in your trading and have a great day.